The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
We need a revolution. There's only one solution. I need somebody to show me love. We need a revolution.
To episode 375 of Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW Seattle, and streaming live to CHD TV, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Lisa Templeton. This hour of Free Speech Radio is brought to you by the members of our nonprofit, Informed Choice Washington, and it's our donors who keep this free show on the air and support our efforts monitoring legislation, engaging with lawmakers and policymakers, educating the public, and continuing our work on issues that impact medical freedom. So to help us stay on the air, we hope you'll go to informedchoicewa.org and hit donate. And we really rely on your support and appreciate it. The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of KKNW or CHD, and the information provided is not intended to be medical or legal advice. And also, although Informed Choice Washington is an affiliate of Stand for Health Freedom, Informed Choice Washington does not endorse candidates or otherwise participate in electioneering. We're providing this information today so that voters can make educated decisions and gain a resource for their research. So I'd like to introduce Erica Comerford, who is the Director of Political Affairs for Stand for Health Freedom. And by the way, I also need to bring on Bob. Sorry, Bob, I'm in a groove here.
That's okay.
Bob
Lisa,
Runnels, our wonderful president. Welcome, Bob.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here. And hi, Erica. Excited
Hi,
to hear
Bob.
about our voting block for health freedom.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both so much for having me on today.
Yes, Erica. Erica, our audience, I would like to tell, you're a wife and mother of 4, and 2 of Erica's children are vaccine injured, and the other 2 are vaccine free. Since 2016, Erica has been involved with grassroots advocacy within her home state of Indiana. And in 2022, Erica joined Stand for Health Freedom as a legislative analyst. And then last year, she began her new role as Stand for Health Freedom's Director of Political Affairs, dedicating her full-time work to the Vote for Health Freedom initiative, helping endorse, vet, and educate candidates and elected officials on health freedom issues. So really exciting, important project.
Yes.
And you've been working like a mad woman.
Yes, all the time.
And where are we in, when did the first ballots, like the whole range throughout the country, what's the ballot dates like for
The
how?
first election, we had 3 the first Tuesday in March, I believe. And then we finish up the last state's primary election in early to mid-September. And then we'll have, 6 weeks or so off, and then all 50 states in one day on November 3rd.
Oh, right. Okay. And in Washington, our ballots are dropping today, July 17th. So you'll be getting those in the mail soon, listeners. Before we you tell us so much about the Vote for Health Freedom initiative, do you want to give us an overview for those people who don't already know on what Stand for Health Freedom does? Because it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stand for Health Freedom is a nonprofit organization, and we have a little over 1 million advocates in the U.S. In all 50 states. And our main mission is to connect voters, our advocates who share our values of health freedom, with their policymakers at all levels of government, and to really bring the grassroots together behind a single issue of health freedom, and really just teach people how to advocate for these values at every level of government, whether that's in your local town hall and something that is a local issue, or to the state if you have, your state lawmakers that are working on bills and making new laws, and all the way up to the federal government and the agencies in the federal government and things like that. So every level of government, just really trying to help bridge that gap between you as a mother, a father, a grandparent, a single person, and all the way to your elected officials who are really making and passing policies that affect you every single day.
Yeah, and one of your wonderful projects is called Guarding Liberty, and that's this really so well written, persuasive, articulate, gracious email that's sent to all the state legislators in the states who are your affiliates, Stand for Health Freedom. So that includes Washington State, and people can find that on the standforhealthfreedom.com website.
Yes, absolutely. We send that twice a month, and that is the only legislator-facing health freedom newsletter. Many of us can subscribe to newsletters, but this one is legislator-specific. And so all the lawmakers who care about health freedom and want to learn more, can follow that and learn about bill trends as they, go across the country, which I think we'll talk about some of those here in a bit. But so it really helps them to stay in the know and keep a pulse on the things that we care about and really start to, dial in on the messaging that we're using with them so that by the time you're speaking to your lawmaker, it's not something foreign. They've heard it before, and it just helps bridge that communication gap.
Yes, I love that. And then you also have helped 12 states introduce the Medical Freedom Act. Do you want to tell about that?
Yes. Okay. So the Medical Freedom Act is, in summary, a no mandates bill. No mandates of any kind, no testing, no vaccines, no nothing, no masks, nothing. And it's really just a core principle of our freedom. It's the foundation of every other freedom that we have. If we don't have control over the sanctity of our body and the sovereignty of our body, really all of the other rights and freedoms are based on medical freedom, health freedom. And so it's really important that we take back that right that we should have had all along. And so we have model legislation that we provide to our state directors, of which you guys are our Washington affiliates. And we also have things like frequently asked questions and one-pagers and all kinds of supporting documents that we put together and toolkits. And then we help lawmakers in our states to draft that legislation. We support them along the way. We help connect them with lawmakers in other states who are also working on this so they can join forces and see what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, what some of the obstacles are, where the opposition is coming from. And then, help the people have that in their hands too, so that when you're making phone calls and sending emails, you can speak to your lawmakers using kind of some of that consistent messaging that is working well in other states too. So it's really exciting. In 2026, all of the states where we've had this legislation filed, which, as you said, Lisa, is 12 states, those sessions have all concluded. So we can kind of talk about this as a done deal now versus even just a month ago, some were still pending. So it was filed in 12 states. In 5 of those states, it had a committee hearing, at least one committee hearing. In 2 of those states, it crossed over from one chamber to the other chamber. Wow. And then in one state, it passed both chambers and went to the governor's desk for a signature. And unfortunately, in that state, it was vetoed by the governor, and we did not have enough votes to overcome a veto. But I do just want to share how exciting it is that it's made it this far, in the first year, because on average, national average for any given issue, it takes 5 to 7 years for a bill to get passed. From the first time that it's, kind of brought until the time that it's passed, is the average is about 7 years. And so we've made rapid progress in just the first year. I know for a fact that we will have all 12 of those states bring it back next year, and there are several more who are considering it. So we're really just getting started.
All right, which governor vetoed it?
That would be Governor Katie Hobbs in Arizona.
Wow. Okay, almost expected then. Okay.
Yeah. And something interesting about Arizona is 35% of their voters are independent voters. This is an overwhelmingly popular bipartisan issue. And the voters gave their mandate. They wanted this to pass. They called into their lawmakers. They supported this issue, and unfortunately, it did not pass. Governor Hobbs is term limited, so she will be ending her governor seat here in a few months. And then we have an endorsed candidate for governor there, Andy Biggs, who has already committed to pass this if it comes across his desk. So if we can just get it through the legislature again, hopefully it'll be into law next year.
Yeah. Did Katie Hobbs, Governor Hobbs, deliver any rationale for why the veto?
No, as far as I understand it, she had a 2-line veto, and in the reasoning, she talked about basically the abundance of misinformation around vaccines and germs on playgrounds and stuff like that. And so she actually had plenty of misinformation in the simple 2-line veto that she even gave. So
Yeah.
very disappointing, but it's a great start. We'll bring it back next year even stronger.
Yeah. Sounds like she did not read any of your newsletters.
She did something.
Also, your kind of sister organization is Health Freedom Institute. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Health Freedom Institute is, so Stand for Health Freedom is more on the advocacy side. So we are helping advocates get engaged in the policymaking process, versus Health Freedom Institute is more just about education. So we're not, advocating for any specific policy. It's really just general education about health freedom issues. And so one of the things we do is we have article series that we put out. We have video series that we put out. One of those is called, I believe it's called Health Freedom Foundations. And so it's kind of just like, if you're at Health Freedom 101, where do I start? I'm new to health freedom. What does this mean? What do I do? Why should I be, in support of health freedom? It kind of walks you through the early questions that you have when you're new to the issue. And then the article series, actually, if you have heard of our, not to jump the gun here, but our recent book that was published last year in 2025 called The Vaccine Decision. I believe the Vaccine Decision, Every Shot Has a Story. And that actually started as a series of articles on Health Freedom Institute. And we were going to go through every vaccine that's ever been on the schedule and go through how it got its place on the schedule. The history, the little known history behind it, and how the government was involved. Sometimes the military is involved, just the little known history. And so that started as this, what we thought would just be kind of a small article series. And as we went, they kept getting longer and more in depth. And we thought, this needs to be a book. This is too much for a website series. So, if you follow us on Health Freedom Institute, you never know, you could be reading the next book as it's coming out.
Oh, that's good. It's a really good book. And you guys also have a book club that people can sign up for in Substack, where the author, Valerie Farrelly, did I say it right? She has a new last name.
I think it's Farrell. Yes, she just got married.
Farrell. Yes, is hosting that book club each month.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so if you are a subscriber to our podcasts, or not our podcast, our Substack, which is $8 a month, then you can participate in that book club. And Valerie, who wrote the book, leads the book club, and she walks through different sections of the book. And you have an opportunity to ask her questions and, what really was happening here? What about this? What about that? And so it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know many other opportunities you get to have to talk to the author about the book that they wrote.
Yes, and there's a wonderful companion piece that is, tell me the title.
Yes, it's called A Mother's Guide to the Vaccine Decision. So it's a partner book. It's a very thin book, and it is so powerful. It has 2 pages for every infection or every vaccine. And so on the left, it talks about the infection itself, and on the right, it talks about the vaccine that was created to address that. And it goes through the benefits, the risks, and gives you all of the information. So you can take that to your doctor's office, or take that to your family gathering, or wherever you want to talk about this, and have a discussion about your own personal risk benefit analysis. And it's really just putting all of the little details in your hand, and you can go through and make your own decision. An informed decision.
It's very straightforward, and lovely graphics as always that you guys do. And I've already purchased 2, one for me and one for a friend who's a mom.
Yes, it's a great gift for a baby shower or Mother's Day, Father's Day, things like that.
We
Yeah,
can provide links to that as well in our show notes.
that's what I was just going to say. You took the words out of my mouth. And let me just mention one more thing, and then we'll start the vote for health freedom. That Stand for Health Freedom put out a lot of emails, calls to action for our House Bill 1333 in this state. This was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and we actually helped defeat that. That was going to establish a domestic extremism and mass violence task force through the governor's or through the AG's office. And we actually stopped the bill, but then they just put it in a budget line item. So it's still going forward. But we were really excited that you guys helped us a lot, and you have a really big reach in Washington. So I would encourage people to sign up for your email calls to action.
Absolutely.
StandForHealthFreedom.com.
Yeah, if you go to standforhealthfreedom.com/join, then you just go there, put in your email address and your name, and then you'll be on our list. And every time we have a call to action, something urgent that comes up, you'll receive that, and any other major announcements. We don't send a ton of emails. We know that everyone is inundated. We really try to dial it into just the most important ones.
Yes. And your team is just top notch, such classy people and so effective and gracious. And I'm always just so proud to be a part of your team and your group. Just amazing, wonderful, dedicated people.
Thanks so much, Lisa. We love working with you.
Well, thank you. Okay, so when people think of elections, they may not really think about health freedom unless they've been in this movement for a while. Why should they?
Because if you care about health freedom, it's something that you should get involved with. And, you know, a lot of people think that laws just happen and that lobbyists are, you know, throwing money left and right at these lawmakers, and that it just is what it is and it's a losing battle. And that is not true at all. It couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, there is lobbying money spent, but the reality is these lawmakers, and I've worked with many over the years in many states, they are generally good people who they have, you know, these are teachers, these are farmers, these are stay-at-home moms and dads. You know, they are not experts in all the subjects of the bills that come across their desk. And so often they don't know what the real, you know, we're parting hairs on some of these issues and they don't know what the truth is. And so if the only people they're hearing from are the lobbyists who have an agenda, of course that's going to be their talking points. And these lobbyists are very convincing. They have their messaging dialed in. They spend millions upon millions of dollars with strategists, you know, finding the best ways to pass this legislation. In general, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, but in general, the lawmakers that I work with are so thankful that when citizens come forward and give them an opposing perspective, because many times they agree with us inherently, but they don't have, you know, the talking points to push back. They don't have the evidence to push back. And so, you know, maybe they push back to whatever comfort level they have. And then the lobbyist comes back and says, well, yeah, but what about this? And they just feel, you know, kind of outmatched and they don't really know how to support their position. And so we just have to give them faces and names of real people who live in their district, who care about this issue. We have to give them evidence of our position, which we happily provide to you. If you go to standforhealthfreedom.com, we have one-pagers, we have talking points, we have frequently asked questions. We have so many resources there that we help you kind of, you know, dial in your messaging and inform yourself so that you can have these conversations. We make these one-click emails really helpful for you so that if you are busy and you don't think that you have time to do this, we make it as simple as we possibly can. It's literally, you type your name, you can do it in one click. It's always customizable. So if you want to delete what we wrote and put in what you wrote, go for it. We love that. We love when you have customization. So we want to, you know, meet you where you're at and then just encourage you to add as much flavor and flair as you can about your own, you know, individual situation in your family. So yeah, we have to kind of combat this, the industry talking points. And the best way we do that is to meet them where they are already at. And so, you know, get plugged in and have faith that it's working. You know, we've seen it work in other states. Like you said, we got involved with that bill a few years ago and it worked, right? So they're going to come back, they're going to twist and turn and throw it in a budget bill, but we're not going away. And I think they're starting to learn that we're not going away.
Yeah, I think with that show of force that if we hadn't have done that, if you hadn't have helped us, there's a very good chance they wouldn't have heard that other argument. They wouldn't have heard the nay side as well, and they would have maybe stepped forward with it.
Yes.
So you
Absolutely.
can't prove that, but we have to not stay on the sidelines. So I really appreciate Stand for Health Freedom. Thank you, Erica.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
It is helpful to remember that these just are people. They're regular people who put their pants on one leg at a time too. And if they don't, if like you just said, they can push back as far as their own comfort level. And I think each of us can identify with this too. So this we can help give them a path forward. So that's a really good way to look at it, and I think less intimidating too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what have you learned as you've built relationships with candidates and electeds across the country? What have you learned that you think would surprise most people?
Well, we kind of just touched on it, but about, the education gap. I think so many of us think, when you hear a fancy title, that they are some expert. And I'm sure they're an expert in their subject field, but that's like such a narrow lane, and they pass bills that deal with so many topics, crazy topics. And so, we really have to be part of filling in that gap. And part of our survey process for candidates is we have a candidate survey. We try to keep it short, because if you do it too long, then they don't have enough time, and then they just don't fill it out. So we have to strike that right balance of how much information can we get from them before they just click off and don't want to fill it out, but we have, I think, around 10 questions that we ask them on the candidate survey. And then as they submit it, then I will go back through, and if they have a question that is not aligned with our ideal position, we do not discard that and say, oh, we can't support that candidate. We come back to them and we provide education about our position, and we say, hey, I noticed that, you said no to this question. I wanted to provide a little bit more information on, we oppose this issue, and then send them this information. And so what I think would surprise most people is the type of responses that I get. I would say 9 out of 10 times, which is, thank you so much for this information. I actually, upon reviewing it further, I changed my position. I agree with you. And so it's just been so encouraging to hear that even just one email can change their opinion about an issue that we really care about, and that they're not already a subject matter expert in. So we just have to help them get there.
Do you want to go over the topics that are covered in your current candidate survey?
Sure. Yeah. So vaccines is a big question. We ask about mandates for school, also for employers. Some candidates we find are totally aligned on one and not on the other. So in their head, it's like one is acceptable, one is not. And so that's been an interesting gap there too, because we probably feel like, well, you're a yes or a no. And there's a lot of candidates that it depends, so we just work to help kind of bridge that gap a bit. We also talk about removing fluoride from the water. What's an interesting thing about fluoride is it's the only substance added to drinking water to treat the human and not the water. So we talk about that quite a bit. And as soon as you kind of launch with that talking point, people perk up and they say, oh, really? And then we can kind of go on from there. We talk about the pesticide liability shield issue, which we're quickly revising because of the Supreme Court decision last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago. And so we're kind of, going through and revamping our responses to those as the landscape changes. We talk about Real ID. A lot of people don't know that Real ID is a complete invasion of privacy. It is forbidden by our Constitution. It kind of gets watered down in the process, just one step at a time, removing rights, and people become accustomed to that. But it's a complete overreach of privacy, and ultimately they're going to be using that for, additional surveillance, and, you can play it out like social credit scores in China and things like that. So as AI especially can very quickly put all kinds of data points about you together and then link it to your national identity, then that's concerning. Let's see, what else?
SBHCs.
Oh, yes, thank you. School-based health centers. which many can't. That's a good one about, it sounds like such a harmless name. It sounds like who wouldn't support health centers in our schools, because we all envision probably going to see your school nurse. And of course, if someone scrapes their knee, we want to let them have a Band-Aid and, things like that. But when we really dug into this issue, we learned about all the funding and the agenda behind it. And they want to put a child's primary care doctor inside of a school and replace their family doctor, their pediatrician. And now they're only going to see them at school when, of course, your parent is not present and the school is essentially your authority at that point. And many districts are sending home a one-time consent form at the start of the school year. And parents think it just means the school nurse, so they sign it. And then once they have that signature, then that child can be seen for anything and everything from vaccines to birth control to, just so many discussions that a parent should absolutely be present for, regardless of what decision you make. Those conversations should not be happening outside of a parent's purview, So yeah, and then the final question, I think, is we do an open-ended, what does health freedom mean to you? And I love that question because this is where you can really tell where somebody kind of is on that spectrum of what does health freedom mean to you. You can also tell, most candidates, I was surprised. I thought a lot more would probably just lie on a survey just to try and, gain our support. It's honestly very few are just outright lying, and you can pretty much tell right away based on the words that they use. Like this is not the vernacular that health freedom supporters use, but yeah, as an open-ended question, you really, what does health freedom mean to you? Some people, all they talk about is ingredients in the food, or they want to clean up chemicals, in the environment and things like that. And this is great. But they'll never talk about vaccines, or they'll never talk about a school-based health center, or, privacy and some of these other things. And then some people, they just dial right in and they give you a novel that doesn't even fit on my computer screen as I'm going through and reading it. And so you really just get to see like someone's heart behind it when it's an open-ended question like that. And it's encouraging. It's often encouraging.
Yeah. And I've seen your emails back and forth with these candidates, the educational emails that you mentioned. And just, again, I can't speak highly enough of just the conciliatory tone and, just truly sharing information in such a non-threatening way that, in watching your conversations, I've seen some candidates kind of come around on some issues, which is really amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a bipartisan issue. I think since COVID, it's become more of a partisan issue, but in the last 6 months, I'd say it's kind of swinging back the other way, where some of the, some of the fire behind this has started to die down, and we can just get back to like this as a values-based thing and not a partisan-based issue. And, we also are a nonpartisan organization, and our advocates are made up from all different parties, many independents and many on the right and many on the left. And so, it's good that this is starting to die down and we can just talk about the values and not have, someone start out in a position, that is maybe not as listening as we would like them to be. But it's been really encouraging to see these responses, even from the unlikeliest places, where maybe somebody will respond back and they say, I just don't agree with your policy position, and I'm not going to take the survey because I don't think that we would align. And I would say, well, you never know, it would be a good starting point, and you just be surprised, like, yeah, maybe they only align on half of the issues, but then you give them a little education and there's a couple more, and then there's a couple more, and maybe there's one or two that we'll never see eye to eye on, but that's okay. We can work with that. We're all about building bridges, and, we all started somewhere on the spectrum. I did not start in the position that I am now. I was on the total opposite side, and, what won me over is one conversation at a time, and one piece of evidence or one tidbit of information at a time. That's really what moves people, not kind of yes, no, in your face. And if you don't agree with us, then get out. Like, we're never going to get across the finish line if we have that attitude. So
it's true.
We build as many bridges as we can.
Erica, hopefully there's time for me to ask this about school-based health centers.
Yeah.
And your experience with that. I know there's at least one flyer from Stand for Health Freedom that really addresses that as a a key trend to watch out for going forward. Have you been able to come up with any kind of top level analysis of the various ages of consent in the various states? Because I know watching 50 states, you have to watch all the different laws in all the states.
Yes. Oh man, that's such a loaded question because in some, for the most part, if the parent is signing a consent form, they don't even need the minor to consent because the parent has given their consent, even though it's really shaky. Because can a parent consent to something that they don't know is happening? Like that's legally, that's shaky as it is. Then you pair that with minor consent issues where some states are more strict than others and more loose than others. There are some states that allow kids down to 12 years old to consent to their own medical treatment. So that's concerning because does a 12-year-old really understand the true risks or the true benefits of something? They certainly can't pay for the repair if they have an injury, if they're, they can't take care of themselves. They can't pay for their own treatment if something goes wrong. So how can we allow them to consent? Obviously, the age of majority in the United States is 18. So in every other instance, you're considered an adult at 18. You can't sign a contract before 18. Most states, you can't go in a tanning bed until you're 18. You can't get a tattoo until you're 18. So it's, there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of kind of pushing the envelope in these school-based health centers.
Does any state, reserve the true age of consent being 18 these days as the one for any healthcare procedure, or does every state allow some minor consent for some healthcare procedures?
So because you said the word some, I will say, I believe in all 50 states, reproductive care is down to 14 in some instances, but each state has kind of narrowed that a bit. Some states haven't narrowed it at all. It really is a patchwork. And the 14 is a federal thing. There's healthcare privacy at age 14 as it relates to reproductive care. And so that's where it gets dicey also because of the software that a lot of these doctors' offices use and clinics use. The software is not consistent, or it's not able to distinguish between what is a reproductive visit and what's not a reproductive visit. And they have to provide expanded confidentiality if it is reproductive health related. And so many of these practices, I would say most that I have engaged with, are just blocking parents from accessing those records at age 14 unless you go in and specifically request this date of service, and then they'll cross-check that with what happened at that visit. Okay, yes, I can share this with you. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like the responsibility is on the parent to prove that they have access to it instead of the other way around.
Wow. Well, I add here in Washington State, we have minor consent down to 13 and 14 for some procedures. Anything that is kind of routine can be perceived as minor consent's okay. A lot of parents, we haven't heard a lot of violations where parents are truly disappointed that things happened out of their control. Mm-hmm. One lady who's conservative ladies of Washington lady, she had a lot of stuff take place without her knowledge, minor consent. And she left. She's still angry and being an advocate in the space. Yes. But I guess I wanted to point out to you, every state seems to have their own case law where they've developed what their age of consent for various procedures is. In Washington, there's a case, 1967, Smith versus Sibley. That's when the age of consent was 21. And we have now, they're using that court case, age of 21, as a reason to keep drilling backward on the age of consent, minor consent. Yeah. It just makes no sense to me. So things to watch out for. There has been one bill filed in our state by Jim Walsh, I believe, and he is trying to basically reverse that in legislation to just call that case null and void and to reestablish age of consent as proper.
Yeah. Because what did that case law establish, Bob?
I'm sorry?
What did that case law establish? Not that it's 21 anymore.
Right, but it established that somebody under the age of consent has the decision-making capability that they were of mature minor status. Okay. That was the mature minor doctrine in Washington State was defined on that. It's still loose. I still don't understand it. I've read through all the case. I've got the actual documents, which are all in mimeographed copy form from 1967. And it's still not clear what they appealed to the Supreme Court, and the younger person won, the minor won. But again, the merits of that case do not justify, I argue, driving all these other ages of consent down to 13 and 14. And they all cite that case as the basis.
You have to, several states have this mature minor doctrine, and so it varies, among different states, but I know it's most common that the person who's deciding whether or not that minor is considered a mature minor is usually the provider that is treating them, who is profiting from the sale of that appointment and the products that they want to prescribe or give them. And so, it's not some separate third party who doesn't have a vested interest. It's the person that's right in front of you that is already trying to sell that 13-year-old or 14-year-old on whatever they are promoting. And so there's this, imbalance of power. There's, this conflict of interest. There's so many problems with that.
On the positive side, it looks like, because of the way our mature minor doctrine is written or interpreted by any doctor, they do have to keep records. They'll have to justify in writing why this child is considered mature. Mm-hmm. Who gets a hold of that record now? I don't know. Maybe it can stay private with the minor. Right. And so there's nobody else to come around and advocate for the kid.
Well, and that's part of the issue too, is that a lot of times parents don't know that a healthcare encounter has occurred. And so if you don't know that something has happened, you can't speak to your child about maybe a difference of opinion, or maybe your kid comes home and they're quiet after school and they just go to bed and you think, oh, they're probably really tired, or, stayed up too late last night. Well, maybe they're having a reaction to a product that they received in that clinic, and you have no idea because you don't even know that they went to the clinic. You don't know they received a product. So
precisely, huge risk.
Yeah.
Erica, before I'm going to bring up the Stand for Health Freedom voter guide that you created for Washington with your endorsed candidates. Before we do that, I'm kind of backtracking. Will you tell us a little bit about your own journey to this work?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. So, as you said at the beginning, I have 4 kids. We started out following every bit of advice our pediatrician gave us. I received every vaccine. My parents followed every bit of advice that they were given. We actually started out seeing the same pediatrician for my kids that I saw from birth to 18. Oh, wow. We loved this guy, and he's not a bad guy by any means. But then our oldest 2. We started identifying that there were vaccine reactions occurring. And so it was less obvious in my oldest. Hers were a lot more subtle and behind the scenes, but my second would have instant acute reactions. And it kept happening. And we kept saying, well, wasn't this last time after the vaccines that he had this? And, we kept going back to the pediatrician and asking questions. And she said, oh no, I don't know what it is, but it's not that. Mm-hmm. And, after a few months of it, sadly, it took us a while to, kind of believe what we were seeing right in front of us and overcome what we were hearing from the expert. But eventually we said, okay, no more. It's not a coincidence when it's happened this many times. And so we stopped vaccinating. We went on to have 2 more kids who never received a vaccine. Their health could not be any more different from a young age. I will say it is starting to even out now. We've done quite a lot of work with our older 2 kids on kind of restoring their health. It's been a lot of money and a lot of effort, and it was challenging for many, many years, but with time and a good diet and things like that, they are improving quite a bit. But throughout that process, I was also in nursing school. And so I had quite the wake up of what is happening? What am I doing? I don't want to be a part of this system, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to, make that my own decision within a system that I felt was really broken at that time. And so I was halfway through nursing school. I was pregnant with my 3rd, so my first unvaccinated baby. And because I was pregnant, as part of my nursing clinical program, I was able to get a medical exemption to continue on in my program, only because I was pregnant.
What were they trying to have you take?
I believe at the time it was just a flu shot. I think that was the only one that was required at that time. Possibly the H1N1 that was around that time too. I don't remember for sure if that was included, but yeah. And so that first year that I encountered this issue, I was able to continue in my program because I just convinced my obstetrician to sign a medical exemption for me. But then when I went back after I'd had my baby, I went back the next time and they would not budge on a religious exemption. I couldn't get a medical exemption. I couldn't do anything. And so, there's a loophole that's common. I think it's in all 50 states now, except for my home state of Indiana now. This few months ago, we closed that loophole with an amendment to a bill. But it's so common that if you're an employee of a hospital or facility, you're covered under your Title VII constitutional rights, to practice your religion, or if you have a medical disability under the ADA. As a student in a school, you're protected as a student from vaccine requirements. But if you are kind of in that in between, you're a healthcare student, you're considered a visitor in that program. And so you don't qualify for these protections. And that's where I was kind of falling through the cracks there. So like I said, as of a few months ago, we closed that gap in Indiana for most healthcare programs. And we're going to keep at it and try and keep adding more healthcare programs.
Okay. So when you say close that gap, that I can't tell if the gap was something good or something bad.
No, the gap was bad because you didn't qualify for an exemption under your school, and you didn't qualify as an employee because you weren't an employee. You were just considered like a visitor within that facility. And so now we said that if you're a healthcare student and you're in that facility, you're covered by the same exemptions that you would be covered with as a student. So if we can pass that Medical Freedom Act, nobody needs to worry about this. We don't have any loopholes. You just can't mandate a product, period. You just have the freedom to determine for yourself what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to when it comes to your own healthcare decision.
Yeah. Here in Washington, we've received a lot of calls on our hotline, if you will, from nursing students who were just caught in the middle like that. They just didn't understand the paperwork. I thank you for your clarification there, Erica, because that I think we need to understand that better here to be able to advocate for any of the students here in Washington.
For sure.
We do not have any other legislation in place or laws that grant, or affirm any of your exemption capabilities.
Yes. And if anyone has those types of issues, get in touch with Lisa and Bob in Informed Choice Washington, and they can help you connect with us and our team. And if there's anything that we can do, we will do that.
Thank you. Oh, that's
huge. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go to standforhealthfreedom.com, and I'm going to navigate over to under resources and vote for health freedom. And then you're going to bring up a map of the United States, and I'm going to click on Washington and show the guide. It might take a minute, but anyway, Erica, do you want to tell us about this voter guide, who it's for?
Yeah, so this is for everybody who lives in Washington. If you don't live in Washington and you're watching this, your state is included too. Just click a different state on that map. And basically, we try to cover as many districts as we can. We are always looking to expand. We want to include as many local races as possible. It goes from local to state to federal, every level of government. And we go through a process for vetting where we love to have candidates fill out the survey. That's, of course, the easiest way when you hear straight from the horse's mouth. But if we don't have a survey response, we also look at voting records. We look at personal conversations that we've had. We look at social media profiles. We look at news reports. We look at press releases. We look at as much as we can find on a candidate. And if they have a health freedom stance, or especially if they're an incumbent, if we have a voting record for them, you got to earn our endorsement. Like, we're not just going to give it to you. If we have a ton of indication, especially if you're a candidate who's never held office, maybe we'll give you the benefit of the doubt one time, but then once you get in, you gotta vote the right way. We're not giving you a pass anymore, right? Like, we are stand for health freedom, not sit down for health freedom, right? You got to get up and you got to do something. And so, so if you see a name on our voter guide, that means that we have vetted them and they are aligned with Health Freedom. And we have two different levels of support. We have endorsed candidates, which appear in teal, and those are our champions. We know that if I never call you and there's a bill on your desk and it has a Health Freedom overlap, I know you're going to vote the right way, like aligned with Health Freedom. If it's a navy blue name, that means we're not really sure, like we think that they will, and we have every indication that they will, but they haven't necessarily been tested, or maybe they're great on some issues, but then some other ones, like we're still working on that education gap. So, you can use our voter guide to help inform your decisions. We don't want to tell you just who to vote for, just like we're not going to tell you what medical decisions that you should make. But we just want to put tools in your hands that you can use to then, print out and take with you to the ballot box and weigh that against all the other issues that you care about. We encourage you to print it out. Always check back like right before you go vote, because we add new names every day. We do try to have it as filled out as possible before the ballots are sent and before election day, but sometimes we find somebody great at the last minute and we will throw them on there too. So always check back, print it out, share it with your friends and family. I can't tell you how many candidates just this year, we've had over a dozen who have been within 35 votes of winning. In my home state of Indiana, I had two candidates, one that won by 17 votes after a recount and one that won by 2 votes, 1-2. So that could be one phone call, one text message, sharing that guide with one friend, that could genuinely make the difference between a Health Freedom candidate winning and the other person winning. So
that's great. Have you can you think of, well, first of all, are you finding that, how many years has Stand for Health Freedom been doing this Vote for Health Freedom?
We started Vote for Health Freedom in 2022, and we have continued to grow. I think the first year we did voter guides in maybe 14 states. I think in 2024, we did 24 states. And so far this year, we have already put out 40 something voter guides. We're almost finished with the primary voter guides. And then of course we'll continue on to the general election with those who have advanced. So yeah.
That's amazing. And so you have a lot more states. And then what are you finding from candidates? Are you seeing more engagement and reaching out from them?
Yeah, absolutely. In the past, so much of our vetting had to be just what we could find. And it was harder to get a hold of candidates. And there was quite a big divide. There were the candidates who would chase us down and they were already Health Freedom candidates and they were so happy to earn our endorsement. And then it was like everybody else who was like, oh, no, like, what is this Health Freedom thing? Or, or maybe they knew what it was and they didn't want to be associated. And now people are begging for our endorsement. It's incredible. And we will have 3 or 4 candidates who are all running in the same race and they're all very strong. And so we're having to kind of split hairs. So,
Wow.
Huge thanks to everybody who's listening and beyond for making this a kitchen table issue with our candidates. And, that really helps us elect people who share our values. And it makes it easier when you get to the legislative process, when you have people who are already aligned with you and now they're in office and now a bill comes across their desk. If they never hear from a single person, they're already a better starting point. Now, of course, we want them to hear from us, but it's so much easier. It makes the battle so much easier when we have good candidates that are already aligned in office.
Yes, and probably you're connected with them now, and you can introduce people in the states to make that connection so that we can communicate during session and beyond.
Yes, I'm so excited for that. That'll be my main job next year is this year we're electing all these candidates and next year I'll be following up with them as bills are being filed in their state and reaching out and saying, hey, you're on the committee where this bill is being heard. Can you help us get a hearing? Or, can you pass the word to the other members of the committee and let them know these issues that we have with this bill? And it's really just going to, make our work, I think, so much more achievable when we just have such a stronger base that's elected.
Yeah, keep top of mind in their offices.
Absolutely.
You guys get so much done. It's amazing. What would a win look like in 2026 beyond Election Day?
Oh man, if we can get the Medical Freedom Act passed in even just a few states like each year, I don't think it's going to take much for that momentum to spread, because this is already a popular issue with voters. I'm probably going to butcher the numbers here off the top of my head, but I believe it's 80% of, there was a poll done of likely voters, both parties, all independents, all kinds of voters, that said 87%, I believe is the right number, believe that health freedom or that informed consent should be protected, like across the board. And then 91% of voters that believe that that health freedom is a like basic human right that should never be up for debate because of like a state law. So this is overwhelmingly popular. It's not partisan. It's not a niche thing. This is like every American wants the right to say what happens, and what medical procedures you consent to and don't consent to. So I think if we can get it through a couple states, more will keep adding on as they see that, like, oh, this is doable, so.
Well,
Yeah.
before Stand for Health Freedom got more involved, isn't the Medical Freedom Act already passed in one state?
It has. So in 2025, it passed in Idaho.
Right.
And so you may know Leslie Manukian with Health Freedom Defense Fund. And so she really led the charge on that in Idaho in 2025. And then after that passed, Leslie and our organization really linked arms, and we created model legislation that other states can deploy. And so then really now we've created this coalition of, I believe it's 15 organizations, health freedom organizations, many that everyone listening here would recognize right away. And we have worked together. We have, group texts and emails flying left and right about making sure that we are, unified in our messaging and really using every avenue that we can to get the word out. As these states have filed these bills, we're really linking arms to make sure that we're getting the calls to action out to as many people as possible. And so that's another thing, that this was just our first year of that coalition. We're going to keep, growing through that too. So I think 2027 is going to be a huge year. I really do. And beyond that, even bigger. Because again, the more candidates we elect to align with us, the easier our work gets. And we're just going to keep gaining that momentum every single year.
Yeah, snowballs.
Yes.
Erica Comerford, tell people where they can find you.
So you can find Stand for Health Freedom at all of our social handles, which I'm sure you will put in the comments. You can go to standforhealthfreedom.com/join, and that's where you can sign up for these action alerts. You can be signed up to be notified when we post a new voter guide and things like that. You can go to votehf.com, which is our Vote for Health Freedom hub, where we have all of our election-related resources. Let's see. Goodness, social media, the Substack is called The Advocate. We do have a podcast called the One Dream Podcast. We interview candidates, we interview other people in the health freedom space.
You guys had Andy Biggs on there a little bit ago.
We did have Andy Biggs. We also had supported Zach Lane for Iowa governor. That was a huge win for health freedom because he was kind of the underdog coming into that. He was definitely the grassroots candidate, and we got behind him very early. Leah did a podcast episode with him. We got that pushed out. We really worked hard to kind of support him as the grassroots candidate. And he won the primary by less than 1% of the vote. And so he's now going to be on the general election ballot. That's so exciting. So we're going to continue to do this in other states. And I'm so excited.
Well, you're amazing. Thank you so much for all your work, Erica, at Stand for Health Freedom. Bob, thank you for being here today.
Yep. Great to be here. Great to hear from the front lines of all this work. And Erica, again, thank you for helping us here in Washington. Stuff we can't necessarily touch directly the way the laws work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for all the work that you do. And, we're big fans of Informed Choice Iowa here at Stand for Health Freedom.
Informed Choice Washington and Iowa.
What did I say?
Okay.
Iowa? Oh my gosh.
That's okay.
Iowa's pretty good too. Iowa's pretty good.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Join us next week with Jamie Andrews of the Virology Controls Studies Project. And I'd like to thank our esteemed producer, Nathan, at the station for all his work behind the scenes. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking your time with us today. This is Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and CHD TV, and I'm your host, Lisa Templeton, signing off for the week. Here's to embracing your informed life. Bye, everybody.
Informed Choice Washington is a nonprofit organization that advocates for healthy immunity, medical freedom, and fully informed medical consent. The right to make medical choices without coercion is fundamental to our civil liberties and a basic principle in all human rights declarations. To learn more, tune in each Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. to an Informed Life Radio and visit the website informedchoicewa.org. It's time to take a stand for medical freedom. Go to informedchoicewa.org today.
Did you know that solutions containing iodine can inactivate viruses in the nose and throat in 15 seconds? And hydrogen peroxide can do it in under 30 seconds. Decades of studies, including many conducted during COVID, have shown that properly prepared and used nasal spray and gargling solutions can reduce your risk of infection, reduce viral load, reduce symptoms, and reduce transmission of viruses. To learn more, go to healthyimmunitynow.org and check out the EFU Challenge. Why spread fear and infection when nature provides solutions? Go to healthyimmunitynow.org today.
The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.